Hello, welcome to Wellness Wednesday. I'm Brittany. I'm part of HPW's Heat team,
And my name's Peter. I'm also on HPW's Heat team.
and
Uh,
today we're gonna talk about alcohol and substance harm reduction and facts, so that your Halloween isn't a nightmare.
Here at HPW, the Office of Health Promotion and Wellness, our goal is to empower the DePaul community to embrace a healthy lifestyle and to help create a culture of health and well-being that fosters our own personal and academic success, as well as the success of our friends around us and our general community. We work in collaboration with the university and other community partners, and we provide holistic education, support, and resources for different individuals and communities to help establish and sustain long-term healthy behaviors.
Before we get started, if you don't mind checking in, our D-Hub link is floating on the screen below, and there's also a QR code that you can scan in the top left corner, or it might be the right. I don't know. So on our agenda today, we're going to talk about a culture around alcohol and substance use, give you some alcohol facts and effects, talk a little bit about recognizing the signs and knowing your limits when it comes to using some alcohol harm reduction strategies, as well as substance facts and some harm reduction. And then we're going to give you some substance-free Halloween ideas and then leave you off with some support and resources.
Yeah. So, particularly around Halloween, but also just in general, alcohol and substances are often sort of associated with our plans, especially over the weekend as we celebrate. But we just wanted to remind you that your celebration this weekend or any other weekend doesn't have to include alcohol and substances. There's a lot of ways to have a really fun, really exciting Halloween weekend without having to drink or use other substances. And so part of what we hope to give you today and allow you to walk away with is some strategies and some ideas for having a really fun Halloween weekend that doesn't include alcohol and substances. If you do decide that you're going to be using alcohol or substances this weekend, or really any other time, we want to give you some tools and strategies that you can use to keep yourself safe, to keep the people around you safe, and to keep your community safe, so that you're able to use alcohol or substances in the safest manner possible.
So now we're going to move on to some alcohol effects and facts. We're going to first talk about what is a standard drink. So if your drink of choice is a beer, 12 ounces is one standard drink. Malt liquor, 8 to 9 ounces is a standard drink. For wine, it's 5, and then distilled spirits is 1.5 ounces. That one could be tricky because it looks kind of small, but 1.5 ounces is one standard drink. And then to recognize the signs of alcohol poisoning, which can occur pretty quickly if you get carried away. It's passing out or being unresponsive, slow or irregular breathing, seizures, pale or bluish skin tone, and vomiting. And the best plan of action for if you recognize these symptoms in either yourself or a friend is to get help immediately. Alcohol poisoning is very serious, and it can have some really detrimental effects. So making sure that you guys have a game plan, and knowing how to go about getting help or staying safe or what to do if something does happen is really important.
Yeah, and it's really, we talk about the standard drink because it's important to realize that not everything you drink has the same alcohol content in it. So one drink is not one amount of alcohol across the board. So for example, if you were to have one glass of beer, you might and most likely are consuming less alcohol than if you have one can of Four Locos, which is a ginormous can that has more alcohol in it. So it's just important to be cognizant of what it is that you're consuming and how much there is. Um, so it's also important that if you decide to consume alcohol or other substances, that you know what your limit is. Um, it's a little bit different for all of us, and there's some different factors at play. But it's really important that you know and recognize your own limits so that as you're going through your night, you can sort of keep track of where things are at for yourself. Um, we often talk about binge drinking, and so we wanted to give you some idea of what binge drinking is. For women, it's considered 4 or more alcoholic drinks, and for men, it's considered 5 or more. So as a woman, if you're having 4 or more alcoholic drinks in a night, that would be considered a night of binge drinking, and for men, that's 5. Now, binge drinking can have some really negative effects on your body and your mind. That can look like motor impairment, so you might have trouble walking around or like handling things. It can look like slurred speech or trouble focusing and concentrating on something. You might also notice some breathing problems and more like labored breathing or difficulty getting like a full breath of air. You might also notice some memory problems, and memory problems are something to keep an eye out for that night, but also the next day. If you're looking back on the night and saying, oh, I don't really remember everything that happened last night, that's a really good indication that maybe you had a little bit too much to drink. Also reduced inhibitions. So this is sort of like lowering your own barriers to doing something. And a lot of times those inhibitions are there for a reason. And so when we're reducing them frequently, that's when you get into a situation where you do something that you might not have done had you been a little bit more sober. And so it's important to remember that, because those can have some pretty serious negative consequences for us. Some other things are confusion, and in really serious cases, especially like Brittany said, in cases of like alcohol poisoning, coma or death can result. And so those are obviously the most severe consequences of drinking, but they're also still very real consequences. So it's important to be aware that those can be the result of drinking too much in a night.
So now we want to provide you with a couple alcohol harm reduction strategies if you do choose to partake, so that you can have a nice, safe, enjoyable night. It's best if you eat before you consume any spooky drinks. So that includes your wines, malt, liquors, spirits, or beers. Plan ahead, know your limits. Definitely going back to our last slide. Knowing what binge drinking is, knowing when you've had one too many drinks, or knowing your threshold for drinking, because like Peter said, it's different for everyone. Alternating between alcohol and water is very important. You want to make sure you stay hydrated while you're drinking. Never mixing alcohol and other drugs, especially if you're not sure where other substances are coming from or completely what they are, because of either lower inhibitions or they're from someone you don't know. Making your own drinks is really important. That way you know what's in your drink, and you can be conscious of those standard drink sizes, as well as drinking in an environment that you feel safe in. Those are all great harm reduction strategies, just so you can have a fun rest of your night.
Exactly. And if you look, so each week with our Wellness Wednesday, we post a blog post that relates to what we're talking about. And so if you go check out our blog post for this week, we have some really useful resources, including a blood alcohol content calculator. So this can be a really useful tool if you're interested to sort of see how much exactly you've been consuming, and where that puts you at sort of on a scale of blood alcohol content. So some other ideas for and strategies for harm reduction around substance use are not sharing needles. So this is a really important one. If you are choosing to use drugs that you're using a needle for, ensuring that you have a clean needle or syringe that you're using is really important. Sharing needles can introduce a lot of really harmful bacterial or viral sort of like foreign bodies into your body, and that can lead to some really serious infections and illnesses. If you're trying to get clean needles, they are accessible. Again, in our blog post, we've linked a few resources that are really great and really trusted. And you can go to TPAN or the Center on Halstead, and they both offer needle exchanges or syringe exchanges that are really good resources should that be something that you need. It's also really important that you know the substances that you're taking and where they're coming from. A lot of substances can have additives mixed in that introduce additional impurities that can be really dangerous to consume, in addition to the already sort of inherent danger of taking a substance. So it's important that if you are deciding to use a substance, you know what it is you're taking and you know where it's coming from, and that the person that it's coming from is someone that you trust. And if this is the first time that you're choosing to use a substance, it's a really good idea to use with someone who is an experienced user. And not only someone who's experienced, but someone who you trust. Someone who's experienced will be able to recognize some signs that things might not be going so well, and they can call and get help if that's a situation that arises. They can also just ensure that you're safe throughout the process, and that if anything bad were to happen, that they're able to get someone who can help you.
Another really important harm reduction strategy for substance use is trying not to mix substances. Some substances don't work well with others, and they can lead to a really bad night and just a really bad time, because of, just not a good time.
That's a super good point. And I think a lot of times we think about like mixing substances as like mixing two different like illegal drugs or like alcohol and drugs or something. But it's also important to be cognizant of like any medications you might be taking and mixing those with whether it's alcohol or other substances, because those can create some really complex negative reactions as well.
Yeah. For instance, you don't want to be taking some form of an upper with some form of a downer. It's not going to give you the effect that you're either looking for or that you want.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a common misconception around specifically uppers and downers is that they cancel each other out, but that's not the case at all.
So now we're going to move on to some fun virtual substance-free Halloween ideas. Watching a spooky movie with friends, using Netflix Party, or if you guys are in person, maybe finding something on a different channel. I highly recommend Halloween Town or Twitches. Those are my favorites. Decorating or carving pumpkins can be a really good time. Playing Among Us, or having an Among Us showdown. It's been really fun to play with my friends. It's always fun figuring out who the imposter is, especially if you're playing in a group in person. Playing Scribble.io or a Pictionary style game. Making a great meal that you've always wanted to try and sharing it with a roommate or a friend. Doing an activity that relaxes you, maybe taking a step back from traditional Halloween activities and just reading, baking, painting, writing letters, or anything that just helps you, or having a self-care night. And then checking out some fun activities that clubs or other places are hosting on D-Hub, which is like our central DePaul website for events. Those are all great ways, but also making sure that we stay safe with alcohol and substances, but also we are in the middle of a pandemic. So trying to keep your group of people to a minimum, and being around people that have also been taking the necessary precautions, and it might not seem cool to wear a mask, but it's really important. So I think that's something that we should look out for. Peter, do you have any fun, maybe substance-free Halloween plans?
Well, I actually just carved pumpkins with my roommates a little bit ago. So that's definitely a super fun alternative. And also something that you can make take a long time. It can be super fun and is a really, I think, just good alternative.
Yeah.
I know I've like done some like online games with friends from like back at home that I don't get to see in person. Um, and so I think all of those can be really, really good ways to just have something else to do on Halloween night.
Maybe having a spooky dance party with roommates or by yourself.
Yeah,
That's always a
exactly.
great
Uh,
option.
yeah, I think I'm really glad that you brought up too, like we are still in the middle of a pandemic, and so like I think a lot of times there's a lot of parties on Halloween and stuff, and people going out and like being with a bunch of different people, but I think it's important to remember that this year that might not be the best idea, and so there are some other really awesome alternatives that for this year you should try and invest in and see, try and explore. Um, we also I want to just go back for a second to give a few more um, oops, a few more just ideas around alcohol harm reduction. Um, I know we touched on these, and we just have a bit of extra time. So, um, one thing that I found is really useful is it can be challenging is like mixing alcohol or alternating alcohol and water. It can be challenging because I think a lot of times it's hard to be the person drinking water if you're at like a party or something, and I think there's a lot of pressure from people around you to drink sometimes, and so something I think can be useful is just drinking water out of like the cup that you had alcohol in, so that it's really hard to tell then that whether you're drinking water or you're drinking alcohol, um, and that can just make it a little bit easier to switch between water and alcohol. Um,
That's
uh,
a great tip.
yeah. Um, let's see. I think making your own drinks is a really good idea too, because if you wanted to, you could either put less alcohol in, or you could just make your drink without alcohol at all. And that's another thing that's like really easy to do subtly, if that's something you're concerned about. Um,
Mocktails. You can make some Shirley Temples. Those are always a great time.
they're super delicious. They probably honestly taste better without alcohol in them than with alcohol in them. So
Yeah.
um,
You can add that to your substance-free Halloween ideas. You can make some mocktails with friends and maybe watch a movie or something.
yeah, exactly. That's a great idea. Um, if you are going to go to someone else's house or something for Halloween, just remembering to like either make sure you have a place to sleep that night if you're planning to drink or use substances, or have a safe, sober ride home that you trust. Um, if it can be a sober friend, right now that's probably better than an Uber, only because we are in a pandemic. But um, I think taking an Uber is still better than you driving yourself, if you've been consuming alcohol. Um,
Definitely.
but yeah, so we we also have a few other resources at the end of the blog post that are listed here, but are also on the blog post if you're interested in looking at them. Brittany, did you want to say a little bit more about these resources?
I can. So you can always come visit us at the Office of Health Promotion and Wellness. We have a couple of things on our Twitter, Insta, and Facebook right now that are geared to perhaps substance-free activity ideas or some other harm reduction strategies. You can always email us or visit our social media. Every Monday, we have Hot Seat with Heat. That's where we kind of sit down with someone else in either the DePaul community or outside of it and get to know them. And then Wednesdays, you're here, we have Wellness Wednesdays. We talk about different wellness topics. This week was substance and alcohol harm reduction strategies. We talked about trauma previously. We've talked about career planning, a bunch of other wellness ideas. So we always love to see you there. You can always check us out on D-Hub as well and look at our other events. The Office of Gender Equity and Title IX is another great resource if you need it. Alcohol and Drug Abuse Action Helpline is a 24-hour hotline that can kind of just either if you feel like you're abusing drinks or you feel like you're in a space where you may need help with substance or alcohol use, they're a great place to like get resources. And if you're in the DePaul community, we have a substance use prevention specialist, Katie. She's amazing. She's a part of our team. We love her so much. You can always email her. Her email is down below, as well as her phone number. And she's an amazing resource if you have anything you need to talk about. If you have anything you need to discuss about substance use or you need help with substance or alcohol use, she is the DePaul go-to person.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're, whatever it may be, whether you feel like you're struggling or need some extra support, or if you're just looking for some external resources, or you really just want to learn more and you're curious and you're trying to keep folks around you safe and healthy, the Office of Health Promotion and Wellness is always here. And we're a really awesome resource to, one, be able to provide you with some direct support and guidance, but also to be able to direct you on to other resources should that be what you need. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're always happy and excited to hear from you, regardless of what it may be about.
We are also a non-judgmental resource. So if you're scared of being judged because of maybe substance or alcohol use, fear will not. You can always come talk to us. We have a lot of empathy and understanding, and we would love to point you in the right direction as far as resources and just helping you and supporting you on whatever journey that you choose for yourself.
Exactly. We also at DePaul have a really awesome collegiate recovery community. And so this community is for anyone who identifies as being in any form of recovery. It's particularly relevant to this topic because for some folks that looks like recovery from alcohol or substance misuse, but it can include things like mental health or eating disorders or really anything that you may identify as being in recovery from. And so if that sounds like something that could be helpful to you, to have a supportive, understanding community of folks who are also identify as being in recovery, I'd really encourage you to check out the collegiate recovery community. That's something that, again, you can ask the Office of Health Promotion and Wellness all about. We'd be happy to give you some more specific info.
If you would like a direct link, Katie also runs that. Her email is down below on that last resource. So feel free to reach out to her.
Exactly.
Sorry for cutting in.
No, that's great. She is an awesome resource. We also have, like I mentioned in our blogs, we have a number of blog posts that one of our other HEAT team members, Natalie, has put together some really awesome spotlights on folks who are in the collegiate recovery community. And so there's some really awesome resources there that she's put together that are really, really phenomenal. And I think could give you, if you're curious about it, give you a little bit more insight into what exactly it looks like.
Yes. Well, we want to thank you so much for coming tonight. We really enjoyed presenting to you and giving you what information we know and whatever support and resources that we could provide for you. We really love talking about wellness and really giving back to our community and informing you as much as we can. So we hope you check us out again next week at our next Wellness Wednesday and check out some of our other events on D-Hub. We love to have you there. We'd also love to see you on Monday at our Hot Tea with Heat. And we would also really love if you checked us out on social media. So once again, our tags are on there. We are at Healthy DePaul on both Insta, Twitter, and Facebook.
Mhm.
Anything to say, Peter?
If you're watching right now, again, if you weren't here at the beginning, please go check in on D-Hub. The link is either at the bottom of the screen or in the top corner, and it's the QR code, and you can scan that, and it'll take you right to the link and get you checked in really easy. So
Yeah.
we really appreciate that.
Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great rest of your quarter. We hope to see you again.